Hello, my name is Zalman Berkowitz, and here I'm going to talk a little bit about Dissipative Structures, a series of 4 paintings. I'll show a few images within the video as well so that you can get a better sense of what they look like, but we'll just talk about kind of, what I was thinking. This project took a year to complete. It started on 9/11 and ended on my birthday. It was 9/11/2001, for those of you that remember, or have maybe heard about this thing that happened, kind of changed the cultural landscape that we were experiencing. Pain and anguish, that was tough for me, and I wasn't even that related to it, although I did used to work in Manhattan in the wine trade, and I have been to tastings at Windows on the World, which was in one of the towers, and so it's a place I had visited. I was familiar with it, and the humanity, really. So DS1 Struggle is where it started, in a very kind of dark, tormented, pain-y kind of place. Having art as a media to exercise a lot of those feelings has been very helpful for me throughout life, continues to be. And so that's kind of what the start of that was. I wanted to do something that would keep me occupied and thinking about my own feelings and how that relates to the larger group. So it started there and then progressed into a quad-tick. They all fit together. They're part of that interchangeable quad-tick in this case, but designing on the square into thirds so that they can be tiled, they can be moved around, really combating that idea of visual furniture. I want to still be able to look at something and still engage with it. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Starts out, there's a poem for each one, of course, and it really, as they fit together over that year of painting them, it occurred to me that they kind of relate to my own creative process in a way. And I tend to go through this process often, and I start with struggle, and that there's something maybe I want to make, but I don't know quite what it is, and it's a little frustrating because there's an image in my head, and maybe my hands don't understand how to articulate that yet, or my mouth doesn't, or for whatever reason, it's got more to learn. So it starts with the struggle of trying to manifest something that's imaginal. And then from there, work. You understand what it is to do, and it's layers and layers of process, and it's repetition, and I'm making these little tiny dots, and each one of these little panels just on the overpainting to make dots is like 4 hours straight, like a whole session just making dots, and that's all that happened. I discovered later that if you're not using oil, or that if you thin it and use a stick, dots are way easier to make. This is with a tiny round brush and trying to get circles to be circular. So not recommended, but it's a lot of work, and really kind of fine-tunes those micro motor muscles, which is another story entirely. I was reading at the time a lot about African fractal patterns, and just this idea of geometry being kind of an intrinsic way of looking at the world, and stories about, in a wonderful book called African Fractals, actually. I think it's Ron Eglash, but I will put the title up for you now. Okay, so that's funny to me. Moving forward, the idea that things fit together, and that there's a geometry that's kind of intrinsic to our experience of life and living, no matter where we're from. And hearing stories about these missionaries that would come and try to educate the indigenous people, and the indigenous people would have children doing geometric patterns that were beyond the understanding of a lot of the missionaries. So I find that kind of an interesting way to look at knowledge. And so these kind of fit together to move through my process. Again, that's what I'm here for at the moment. Struggle, work, purpose, and then being. Purpose after the work, there's something that happens in the process for me where I get a sense of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Initially, maybe I just have the idea that I want to do something, and then I go through the work and I go through a process, and I come up with a reason that I'm doing it. And it's not always linear in that way. Sometimes I have a reason and I don't understand this part and what it's going to manifest like. I mean, it's the whole palette of possibilities, but in this case, purpose and then being. And when I started in 2001 at 9/11, it was this really dark, kind of crunchy place. I'd gone from a certain level of profession in the wine trade in Manhattan to fleeing Manhattan to go to the desert and paint, and was working in TGI Fridays and spitting poetry with tables and stuff. And it was just this kind of different place all of a sudden. And so that started there, and it progressed through this. And as I was working on these, I was working on myself. And I came to a place at the end where a beautiful girl and just really in love with the world, and everything seemed to have this rose-colored tint to it. And I think that's how being is, in a sense, is when we're really, or at least for me, when I'm fully present, when I'm really immersed in my activity, in my life, there is this kind of shininess to it. And I don't know, maybe you can relate to that. So I really enjoyed the working with yellow, working with earth tones, and kind of playing into these textures. But it's the same repeated shape. The shapes fit together to create DS1 through 4, which I call dissipative structures. And of course, they're for sale. I'd like to keep them together. Let me know what you like to do. I've also got limited editions and pitch. But so you'll see here, the seed shape is repeated 4 times in purpose, and that was me getting a sense of how this composition would fit together as 4 panels. And I've reversed some of the geometry here as well. And this was one of the first pieces where I really started getting into being able to see what was behind the layer that I was working on. That's a theme that's continued throughout the 15 to 20 years I've been doing this, and I'm fascinated with that. I love deconstruction. I love being able to see what the grid lines are, or imagine how something might be put together. So I want to see the image in this case, but at the same time I want to see underneath it. I want to see the underpinnings, the armature that the colors are hanging on. So that's a lot of what happened in purpose. But there's also this sense of driving towards something, like there's this thing over there, and we're going to go do it, and that's what we're doing, that's why, rah, Whereas being for me is more of just, you're here, you're just right here. There's nothing else to do or be or whatever. It's all kind of happening. So this being a kind of representation for me of a creative process that I experience. So thank you. I hope you enjoy. Cheers.